I used to wonder what it would be like if the person you loved the most became the one who hurt you the most. My name is John Carter, and I never thought that I'd have to fight, not just to be respected, but to be free. This story is not easy to tell, but if you're watching, please stay with me. And before we begin, make sure to click the subscribe button and write a comment about where you are watching from. I always thought that getting old would come with a kind of quiet smartness. A calm afternoon with a cold drink, a comfy chair, and maybe a few books I could finally finish. What I didn't think would happen was that getting old would feel like being erased, one choice at a time. My name is John Carter. I'm 69 years old. A few months ago, I lived alone in the house my wife Elizabeth and I built together, in a town called Portland, Oregon. Every nail in the garage had a story. The workshop still smelled like her paint. I wasn't ready to leave. I didn't need to leave. I had slipped on a small rug in the living room. It wasn't a bad fall. I had a few bruises, but I was still sharp, still walking, still me. But that one little fall was all the reason my son Benjamin needed. He showed up the next morning very early with a look in his eyes that I couldn't understand. It was cold, and he looked far away. He didn't even ask how I was. He came in with a business bag and a tight plan, speaking in short sentences. "Dad, we found a really good place for you to live. It's time. It's the best for everyone." I laughed, thinking it was a joke, but he wasn't laughing. "Ben," I said, "I'm not going anywhere. I'm fine. This is my home." But he had already made all the plans. My things had been packed. The papers were signed. I stood in the hallway and watched as two strangers came to move my boxes. My chest felt tight. I couldn't breathe. It wasn't really happening. I tried to argue and tried to fight back, but the look in his eyes, like I was a project, a problem to be solved, made the words get stuck in my throat. "You fell?" he said. "You could have broken your hip. You live alone. It's too risky, and honestly, I don't have the time to keep checking on you." He didn't say it in a mean way. He said it in a businesslike way that somehow made it feel even worse. They took me in a van. I wasn't even allowed to ride in his car. I remember the quiet, that deep, cold quiet that got into my bones as we drove away from the only life I had ever known. The new place was clean and modern, with large windows and simple colored walls, but it smelled a little like cleaning soap and something I can only call being left alone, a quietness you can't describe unless you have lived it. I remember sitting on the edge of the new bed in the room they gave me. My name was on a small sticker on the door, like I was a package or a misplaced item that someone had finally decided to put away. I waited for Benjamin to say something, maybe an apology or a kind word, but all he said was, "I'll come back to see you later this week. Don't worry, Dad, you'll be comfortable here." Then he left just like that. I didn't cry right away. I just sat there looking around. The walls were empty. My things were in one suitcase. The home I had filled with memories was now only in my mind. I wasn't old enough to forget things, but I was old enough to be forgotten. That night, I lay in a bed that wasn't mine, listening to the soft hum of the lights in the hallway. I thought about Elizabeth, about how we used to laugh at the idea of growing old away from each other, how we promised we would always take care of each other, and now she was gone, and my son had put me away like I was nothing. But I wasn't nothing, not yet. Something inside me woke up that night, a small bit of something I hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't anger, not even sadness. It was the start of a quiet fight. They thought I was done, but they had no idea what I was about to do. I looked at the ceiling until morning, making plans, planning everything. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of soft wheels rolling down the hallway. I would later learn they were medicine carts. That and the sound of feet walking. It was a place where even time seemed to have been given medicine. My door was slightly open, and I could hear someone coughing from the room next to mine. The smell of eggs and overcooked coffee floated in. I got dressed slowly. Every move I made was a reminder that I still had control over something. When I walked into the hallway, the staff greeted me with polite nods and tight smiles. It wasn't warm, not real. It was just a routine. I was part of the furniture now. The main room was filled with quiet conversations and the noise of the TV. No one looked up. No one asked my name. Some people stared without feeling at game shows. Others fell asleep with plastic cups of juice next to them. I stood there, easy to miss. I sat in a corner by the window. The sky was gray. A squirrel hopped along the fence outside and stopped to look in. And for a moment, I wished I was that squirrel, free to run wherever it wanted. No paperwork was needed. Benjamin didn't call that day or the next. It wasn't until the fourth day that he showed up. His shirt was tucked in like he had come straight from work, which, knowing him, he probably had. He sat down across from me in the living room, not even trying to look me in the eye. "I brought your insurance papers," he said, handing me a stack I hadn't asked for, "and a few photos for your small table." There were 3, one of him as a child, one of Elizabeth holding Benjamin as a baby, and one of me, cut out from a family vacation photo like I was an extra person. I stared at them without saying anything. "Is there anything you need?" he asked. His voice had that tone that people use when they want to seem kind, but hope you will say no. I wanted to ask him why. Why this? Why now? Why couldn't he just check on me sometimes like a good son? But I already knew his answer. "This is easier." So I said nothing. "You're quiet," he said. "I'm thinking," I replied. He looked uncomfortable, like even that small bit of a challenge bothered him, and then he said something I will never forget. "It's not that I don't care, Dad, but you've had your time. Now let me take care of things." Had my time, as if life came with an end date. As if I had nothing left to live or give or feel. He left after 10 minutes. He didn't hug me. He didn't say he loved me. He just walked out like he had finished a job. The next week went by very fast. Meals were served at certain times. Bingo games with prizes that didn't matter. I tried to smile at the other people living there, but most were too lost in their own quiet. Others were too far gone to even remember their names. That's when I understood the worst part of this place. It wasn't the boredom. It was the being erased. They don't just take away your freedom. They take away who you are. No one here knew that I once worked as a teacher, that I played the saxophone for Elizabeth every Sunday morning, that I fixed cars from nothing, that I read every Steinbeck book twice. To them I was just a room, just a person who might fall, just another old man whose time had passed. Until one afternoon, when a nurse I had not seen before walked in, holding a paper and a kind smile. Her hair was tied back. Her clothes were clean, but her eyes were tired in a way only someone who carried too much for too long could understand. "Mr. Carter?" she asked. "Hi, I'm Sarah. I'll be checking on you this week." I nodded. She sat down without the usual distance most staff kept. "Is there anything you want me to know about you?" she asked. It was such a simple question, but no one had asked me that since I got there. I looked at her for a moment, not sure how to answer. Then I said, "I like crossword puzzles. I make a very good lemon meringue pie, and I still remember the smell of my wife's perfume." Sarah smiled. "That's good. I'd like to know more." And just like that, something changed. She wasn't like the others. She wasn't pretending. She saw me. She came back the next day, and the next. We talked and laughed. She brought me coffee from the break room when the dining hall ran out. She called me John instead of Mr. Carter, and she remembered the name of my favorite band from the cities. She told me about her daughter, about her mother who had Alzheimer's, and about working nights to get more money. She never complained, but her voice felt heavy, and slowly she became the only reason I didn't feel completely invisible. I still missed my house. I missed Elizabeth, and I still felt betrayed. But for the first time since I had been forced into this place, I wasn't just waiting to fade away. I was watching, listening, and learning who was still on my side, and who never truly had been. Because somewhere in that quiet, I was starting to understand something. This wasn't just a place for old people. This was the place for a fight I hadn't known I was about to have. I began to notice the little things first. The way the staff knocked two before coming in. The way some people living there stared at nothing. Their stories were stuck behind their tired eyes. The way people stopped asking you questions once they decided you were just old. But with Sarah, it was different. She saw past the wrinkles, past the daily medicine, and the paper on the door. She listened when I spoke, not with pity, but with respect. As if I still mattered. Every morning, she made time for me, even when she was busy. She'd put her head in my room and say, "Good morning, John. Are you okay today?" Just that, those few words gave my day a reason to be. She treated me like a person, not a paper file. It had been 2 weeks since Benjamin last visited. Not that I expected much. My phone sat on the small table. Quiet. He hadn't called. No messages. Not even a quick check-in. And yet there I was telling stories to a nurse, half my age, like she was the only family I had left. Sarah had this laugh, warm and real, the kind that surprised me sometimes. She told me about her little girl Chloe, who had just turned 6, about how she loved peanut butter sandwiches and hated going to sleep. She says I have to leave the hallway light on, she said one night as we sat by the small garden behind the center. Says it keeps the bad dreams away. I smiled. Smart girl, smarter than me most days, she replied, and her voice cracked a little bit. She looked away, cleaning invisible dirt from her shirt sleeve. I didn't ask more questions, but I saw her hands, a little rough, her nails cut short, the hands of someone who had to do everything herself. Later, she told me her mother had been sick with Alzheimer's for 2 years. Sarah was 29 back then. She'd taken on 2 jobs to pay the bills. She had to move her mom into her apartment because she couldn't pay for a place for her. "And your husband?" I asked gently. She smiled, but it was sad. "He left when I told him I wouldn't put my mom in a home," she said. "He said he wasn't ready to carry that kind of weight." That kind of weight. I knew the feeling. I carried it too. Every day since Elizabeth passed away. That night, I lay in bed thinking about her, about the hard work, the being alone, the way she smiled, even with the world on her shoulders. And I thought about how little Benjamin seemed to know about carrying weight or being loyal or love. The difference was too much to bear. One morning after breakfast, I asked Sarah if she could help me find my lawyer's number. She blinked, surprised, but didn't question me. She just nodded. "Of course, I'll bring you a phone and a quiet place to make the call." I could see it in her eye. She didn't want to be nosy, but I knew she felt that something bigger was happening. It took less than 5 minutes. My lawyer, David Brooks, had been our family lawyer for years. He remembered my voice right away. "I need to make changes to my will," I told him, "and I'd like to start the papers for an adult adoption." There was a pause.
"John, are you sure?" "I've never been more certain."
That same afternoon, I wrote 2 letters. One to Benjamin. It was short, cold, and just had facts. And one to Sarah. That one I sealed and hid inside the drawer of my small table. I wasn't ready to give it to her yet, but when the time came, I wanted her to know. She wasn't just a nurse. She was family now. I didn't tell her that day or the next. Instead, we kept our daily routine, talking about books, her daughter's schoolwork, the weather, but something had changed in me. I no longer felt like I was just watching what was happening in this place. I had a reason again, a quiet job, story to rewrite. Because if Benjamin thought he could decide the end of my story without even asking me, he was about to learn just how wrong he was, and I wouldn't have to raise my voice to do it. It was early in October, when the leaves outside the place turned that bright reddish color. I remember looking out the window one morning, watching them fall like paper memories, floating slowly to the ground. Something about how quiet it was reminded me of how my life had been slipping away little by little while no one seemed to notice, except Sarah. That day she brought me a cup of tea, real chamomile tea, not the fake kind. She had found it at a discount store on her way to work. "I thought of you," she said. "It smells like something you'd like." And it did. It smelled like my old garage, like Sunday mornings with Elizabeth reading the newspaper while I fixed the fence. We sat together by the window, just watching the trees for a while. She looked more tired than usual, but she still had that calm, steady quietness. That was Sarah's magic. No matter what was going wrong in her life, she made you feel like you were the most important thing in the world during those few minutes together. She told me Chloe had gotten sick the night before. She had a fever and a sore throat. She'd stayed up all night, rubbing her back, giving her water, holding her little hand. "It's nothing serious, just a cold," she said. But I could hear the tired sound in her voice, the tiredness, the fear that comes when you're doing it all alone. I asked her, "Do you ever get a break?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'll rest when she's grown up. Right now, she needs me." Something clicked in me then, and knowing, a quiet confirmation of everything I'd been feeling. It wasn't just admiration, it was recognition. I saw myself in her. The younger me who had once held Benjamin in my arms through many nights without sleep. The man who gave up weekends, trips, and job promotions for his family. The difference? I did all that and ended up in a place like this. But Sarah, she deserved better. Later that day, I called David Brooks, my lawyer, again. I finished the change to my will. Half of my money and things, including the house, savings, and remaining investments, would go to Sarah Evans. No big show, no announcement, just a quiet legal promise. It was the first time since Elizabeth died that I felt like I was doing something that mattered again. Over the next few days, I kept a journal, a real one with a leather cover and pages that smelled like an old workshop. I wrote letters to Sarah, to Chloe, even one to myself. I put everything in it. My memories, my regrets, the betrayal that still came from Benjamin's voice when he said, "You've had your time." Every word was like fixing a wound. One evening, I asked Sarah to sit with me in the garden behind the building. The air was cool. The sun was going down behind the trees. I offered her the seat next to me and handed her a small envelope. She blinked. "What is this?" "Not for now," I said. "For when it matters." She looked at me, really looked. "You're not sick, are you?" I laughed softly. "No, my dear. I'm just awake now." We sat in silence after that, our shoulders almost touching. I don't think she understood how big what had just happened was, that I had just rewritten my future, not because of anger, but because of a clear mind, because sometimes the people who are your family by blood are not the ones who carry your heart. And as the light faded, and the first stars appeared in the sky, I found peace with something important. If Benjamin had given me up, then I had every right to give myself to someone who saw me, who valued me, who stayed. I didn't know then how quickly things would fall apart, but I felt it even then. A storm was coming, and I was finally ready to stand in the rain. It was well past midnight when I woke up to the sound of quiet voices down the hallway. Most nights, the place became very quiet after 9 p.m. Lights became dim, and people were put away in their rooms like forgotten books on a dusty shelf. But this night was different. I got out of bed, put a blanket around my shoulders, and opened the door just enough to see the hallway lit with a soft yellow light. At the far end, near the office, I saw Benjamin. I froze. He was supposed to be out of town. He hadn't visited in weeks. And yet there he stood, tense, talking with his hands, as he spoke to a man in a gray suit, someone I didn't know. Their voices were low, but one sentence floated down the hall like smoke. "If he changes that will, I lose everything." I stepped back into the shadows. The lawyer, because that's who the other man had to be, sighed. "It's his legal right, Benjamin. You can't stop him from doing it." "He's not thinking clearly," Benjamin said sharply. "He's alone, confused, probably being used by some staff member." My blood ran cold. He was talking about Sarah. "I want a mental checkup, something official," he said. "If he is said to be not right in the head, the will can't be changed." I couldn't breathe. My heart beat so loudly, I thought they might hear it. "I'm not going to let him give my money to some nurse," he whispered. "He owes me." "Owes him?"
He really believed that.
"That my life, my money, my home, all of it belonged to him, just because he was my son, that he had a right to the sum of my life, just because of biology." Then the lawyer asked, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Benjamin's answer was quick. "Do it." I backed into my room, closed the door quietly, and sat on the edge of the bed, shaking. I wasn't sure what hurt more, what I'd heard or the fact that deep down I wasn't surprised. Benjamin had always been a planner, a schemer, but now I saw the truth without a mask. He didn't care about me being okay. He cared about being in control, and that's when it hit me. I had always wondered about the night Elizabeth died. It happened so fast. She had been in her office late, looking at money papers while I was out visiting a friend. When I got home, she was already gone. A heart attack, they said. No one was around to help. No, I remembered asking Benjamin if he had talked to his mother that day. He said no, but now I wasn't so sure. The next morning, I acted like nothing had happened. Benjamin didn't know I had heard. He smiled a little, handed me a box of tea I hadn't asked for, and said, "Thought you'd like these." I nodded, pretending. That afternoon, I asked one of the newer helpers, a shy girl named Emily, if she could find out which nurse had worked the front desk that night. She thought for a second, then whispered, "It was Linda, but she doesn't talk much." I found Linda, folding laundry in the back hallway. I waited until no one else was around. "I need to ask you something that you can't tell anyone." She looked up, surprised. "Okay, you saw my son here last night, didn't you?" Linda paused, then slowly nodded. "And he wasn't visiting me, was he?" She swallowed. "No, he was in the office for a long time, arguing." "Did you hear anything?" Her voice got quieter. "Only a little. Something about papers. And getting someone said to be unfit." I thanked her, then walked away with the heaviness of it sitting on my shoulders like lead. Back in my room, I stared at the photo Benjamin had left weeks ago, one of him as a boy, smiling in his Little League uniform, the child I raised, the boy I held during storms, the teenager I forgave when he lied about his grades, the man I had stood up for even when Elizabeth warned me he was becoming too selfish and too cold. I had loved him without any condition, but now I understood that love had always been a one-way street. And then, like a movie playing backward, memories came back fast and sharp. Elizabeth's phone call that day, the way Benjamin came late to the hospital with dry eyes and no hurry, the quiet that followed. I didn't want to finish the thought, but I already knew the answer. He hadn't helped his mother, not because he couldn't, but because he didn't want to. He let Elizabeth die so he wouldn't have to deal with the money problems from the company's debt, the debt that Benjamin had a part in creating, and now he was coming for me, too. But I wasn't Elizabeth, and I wasn't going to be erased quietly. I reached into my drawer and pulled out the envelope, the one I had written to Sarah. It was time to give it to her because war had been started, and I had no plan of losing. It happened faster than I ever thought it would. One moment I was sitting in the garden with Sarah, watching the wind carry leaves across the path like whispers from another life, and the next I was being told to pack my things again. Only this time, I wasn't going to another room or a different part of the building. I was being moved to a psychiatric unit. The nurse who told me was new, polite, but like a machine. She said it like she was reading from a list. "Mr. Carter, the doctor has suggested a transfer for observation. A few days just to make sure you're safe." "Safe from what?" I asked. She blinked. "There have been concerns about you being confused. Some unusual talks. Possible signs of believing things that aren't real." I laughed, a short, sharp laugh. "You mean me figuring out my son is a bad person?" She didn't answer. 2 helpers showed up 10 minutes later with a wheelchair. I told them I didn't need it. They said it was the rules. I didn't fight back. Not because I agreed, but because I knew fighting back would only make their lies seem true. If I raised my voice, I'd be called crazy. If I refused to help, they'd use it as proof. I needed to stay calm. They wheeled me down a hallway I'd never seen before, through a locked door with a secret code I didn't have. The moment it clicked shut behind me, something deep inside me broke. The air was different, very clean, thicker. The walls were a quiet green color that felt more like a jail than a hospital. No photos, no music, just the quiet hum of sadness. My new room was smaller. The bed was bolted to the floor, a single window with safety glass. No sharp things, no phone, no Sarah. I asked the nurse, a woman with tired eyes and a tight bun, how long I'd be there. "Until the checkup is done," she said. "And who asked for it?" She paused, just long enough to confirm what I already knew. "Your son made the request," she finally said with a paper from Dr. Harrison. Dr. Harrison, the head doctor of the place, a man I'd spoken to 3 times for a little bit and never once told my secrets to. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall, trying to control the fire rising in my chest. So, this was Benjamin's next move. He couldn't undo the will by himself. But if I was said to be not right in the head, legally unable to make my own choices, then everything I had worked so hard to protect could be taken away, and I would be silenced, literally locked away. The first night in that room was the longest of my life. I didn't sleep. I barely moved. The lights outside my door stayed on all night, shining in through the gap like a spotlight. They brought me pills. I refused to take them. They tried to trick me, said I needed rest, that I was upset. I wasn't upset. I was aware. I thought of Elizabeth, of how she must have felt, alone in that office, holding her chest and calling the number of the one person she thought would save her. And I thought of Benjamin, looking at the phone and choosing not to answer. I cried that night, not because of fear, but because I realized how little I meant to him. I wasn't his father anymore. I was a problem. But then I remembered Sarah, her hands, her laugh, her promise. And I knew she wouldn't let this happen. The next day, a social worker came in, a young man named Ryan. He introduced himself with a clipboard and a soft voice. "I'm here to talk, Mr. Carter. Just normal questions. Don't waste your time," I said. "You're not here to help me. You're here to make the papers look right." He blinked. "That's not true." "Then let me make a phone call." He hesitated. "That's not allowed without the doctors, okay?" I stared at him. So much for my rights. He left 15 minutes later, clearly shaken. I didn't give him the show they wanted. I didn't yell or cry. I just told the truth. Calm, cold, clear. They wanted me to have a breakdown. I gave them a calm mind. Later that evening, while I was pretending to sleep, I heard voices outside my door. "He's thinking clearly," one of the nurses whispered. "Honestly, he's more normal than half the staff." "Orders are orders," the other replied. I felt a small bit of hope. Not everyone was blind. Still, I was trapped, and time was running out. But I knew Sarah, and I knew something Benjamin didn't. He had not thought enough of me, but he had no idea what I had taught her. The first time Sarah tried to see me after they moved me, they told her no. She told me that later. She had rushed in during her shift, still in her work clothes, her name tag swinging, her heart probably beating harder than she'd ever admit. She asked the front desk nurse where I had been moved, and was met with blank stares. "Mr. Carter is no longer your patient," they told her. "The problem is being handled by us." She told me her hands started shaking, that she felt like she was going to scream, but didn't. She knew better. Sarah was smart. She knew the game they were playing. She just didn't know how deep Benjamin's power really went. But she started to look for answers. She wasn't just a nurse anymore. She was on a mission. She called the lawyer I had been working with, David Brooks, and asked for a meeting. When he wasn't sure, she sent him the letter I had written and sealed weeks earlier, the one I had tucked into my drawer like a seed I hoped would grow when the time came. That letter changed everything. David called her back within an hour. He met her in his office the next morning, and from what Sarah later told me, she didn't waste time with nice words. She told him everything about the change in my will, the growing pressure from Benjamin, the way I was suddenly said to be unstable for no reason. She also brought something else with her, a voice recording. 2 weeks earlier, during a normal talk in the hallway, Benjamin had been speaking to the facility's head near the nurse's station. He hadn't noticed that Sarah had her phone in her coat pocket, and he hadn't known she had accidentally hit record while reaching for a pen. In that recording, his voice was clear. He said the words simply, "He's just lonely. Easy to trick. That nurse, she's cheating him. Once I have him said to be unfit, the will goes back to the way it should be." That audio clip was more than enough to make people worried. But Sarah didn't stop there. She found Linda, the night shift nurse, who had seen Benjamin at the place after hours. Linda was hesitant at first, scared of losing her job. But Sarah told her the truth, that if she stayed quiet, she would be a part of something worse than being careless. Linda agreed to sign a statement. Then came the medical papers. Sarah saw things that didn't make sense in the checkup, ordered by Dr. Harrison. Dates that didn't match. Things I was said to have said that I never said. Medicines I was supposedly not taking, even though I had never once said no to a pill before the mental transfer. She took everything, statements, recordings, medical problems, and brought them to David, together. They asked the judge for a quick hearing. They called it what it was, elder abuse. And while all that happened outside, I was still inside that locked part of the building, walking back and forth in my room like a trapped animal. Every day they brought pills. Every day I refused them, my papers filled with words like uncooperative and difficult, as if I were being hard just for fun. But I knew the truth. They wanted me to feel nothing. They wanted me to be quiet. They wanted me gone. I didn't know what Sarah was doing. I couldn't see it. I couldn't feel it. But I believed in her because she was the only person in that building who had ever looked me in the eye and seen a human being. Not a patient, not a problem, not a bank account. And when they finally told me I had a hearing with a judge, I knew she had found a way to get through. They let me shower the morning of the hearing, gave me clean clothes, offered a cup of coffee. I didn't trust. A nurse came in to brush my hair, trying to make it all look nice. But I didn't care about how I looked. I was getting ready for a war. And I wasn't walking into that courtroom as a victim. I was walking in as someone who had nothing left to lose and therefore everything to say. They drove me in a van with dark windows like I was some kind of criminal. 2 helpers sat in the front talking about their lunch plans, while I sat in the back, my hands folded in my lap, pretending not to hear. But I heard everything. I heard how they talked about me. The old man with the nurse problem. I heard them joke about how I must be faking it just to get attention. And I remembered every word, because soon their words would matter. The courthouse wasn't far, just a small gray building with a broken flag outside and too many parking spaces. I was led through a side door away from the public, like I was something to be hidden from view. But inside that small courtroom, I saw her, Sarah. She sat near the front wearing a simple blue shirt, her hands squeezed tightly in her lap. When she saw me enter, her eyes filled with feeling. She didn't speak. She just nodded, as if to say, "I told you I'd come." And then I saw Benjamin sitting with his lawyer, looking proud as always. His suit was too perfect. His body was too ready. He didn't look at me. He didn't need to. He thought he had already won. The judge was a woman, in her late 50s, with sharp eyes and a serious voice. She looked at me like she hadn't decided yet. That gave me hope. David stood and began. He laid out the facts, slowly, step by step, like a small knife, not a hammer. He showed Sarah's audio recording, Linda's statement, the problems in my medical papers, and then he played the tape. Benjamin's voice filled the room. It was cold, planned, ugly. He's just lonely, easy to trick. That nurse, she's cheating him. Once I have him said to be unfit, the will goes back to the way it should be. The courtroom went quiet. Benjamin's lawyer tried to argue, but it was too late. The words were already in the air, making everything dirty. Then it was my turn. I stood slowly. My knees shook, but my voice did not. "I may be old," I said, "but I am not confused. I am not crazy, and I am not done." I looked right at Benjamin. "I trusted you. I loved it. I forgave you for so many things I shouldn't have. But when you let your mother die, when you ignored her call for help so you wouldn't be held responsible for your own mistakes, you crossed a line I cannot and will not forgive." People in the room made a sound of surprise. Benjamin turned pale. I kept going. This isn't about money. It's not even about the will. It's about being respected. It's about being seen, being heard, being human. And if my life is worth nothing more to my own son than a $, then I will spend what's left of it with someone who treats me like I matter. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She reached for a tissue quietly. The judge called for a break. When we came back, her voice was firm and sure. "Mr. Carter is of a healthy mind and has full legal right to make his choices. This court finds the request to be his guardian, filed by Miss Benjamin, to be without any basis and frankly disturbing." She turned to Benjamin. "You should consider yourself lucky he doesn't press criminal charges." And just like that, I was free. Free from the walls. Free from the quiet. Free from the son who had turned his back on everything good and decent. Outside the courthouse, Sarah hugged me. "Not too hard, just enough, just right." "You did it," she whispered. "No," I said. "We did." But deep down, I knew the real fight was just beginning. Because the law might have cleared my name, but I was far from done clearing my story. The morning after the hearing, I stood in front of the mirror in my old room. My real room at the facility. The same beige walls, the small window that let in slices of morning light. The photo of Elizabeth and me still tucked into the corner of the small table. But something had changed. I had changed. They tried to break me. Benjamin tried to erase me. But I was still here. Sarah came in just before breakfast, carrying a tray with pancakes and fresh strawberries. My favorite. She said nothing at first, just set the tray down and pulled up a chair. Her eyes were tired, but her smile was wide. "Victory pancakes," she said. I laughed softly. We earned them. That day the staff treated me differently, a little more with respect. Some avoided looking me in the eye, especially those who had followed orders without thinking. Others said sorry in quiet, nervous voices. I didn't hold a grudge, but I remembered everything. Benjamin, on the other hand, disappeared. He didn't call, didn't visit, didn't even send his lawyer to clean up the mess. It was as if he had vanished into the shadows, hoping to wait for the storm to pass. But I wasn't done with him. That same week, I finished the adoption papers with David. Sarah Evans, officially, legally became my daughter, on paper, in court, and in my heart. The process was surprisingly simple. A judge asked if this was truly what I wanted. "Yes," I said without a second thought, because what makes someone family isn't blood, it's who shows up when you are broken. It's who fights for you when everyone else walks away. Benjamin found out about the adoption the next Monday. He sent me an email. Single line, "You'll regret this." I deleted it. He wasn't angry because I gave Sarah my money. He was angry because I gave her my love. The next few days I felt lighter. I spent more time outside. I laughed more. I helped Sarah plan Chloe's birthday, an outdoor party with balloons, cupcakes, and paper crowns. One afternoon, while putting oil on a squeaky hinge, I found an old scarf Elizabeth had given me. I held it against my face and closed my eyes, remembering her voice, her quiet strength. "I hope I made you proud," I whispered. And in that moment, I felt something inside me become still, something that had been restless for too long. But the peace didn't last. One morning, David called. "Benjamin is trying to challenge the will again," he said. "This time, he's saying you were wrongly influenced. He's hiring a new team. He wants it all to be undone." Of course he did. A snake doesn't change. He just sheds skin. But this time, I was ready. We had recordings, witnesses, medical proof of my clear mind, legal control of my own things, and now we had the adoption. He couldn't touch a single dollar without messing up the entire web he'd created. Still, the worry came back because no matter how strong I felt, a part of me still hurt. She was my son. He was my baby once, and now he was the bad guy in my story. That night, I sat with Sarah in the garden. We watched the sun go down below the trees, making long golden shadows across the grass. Chloe ran around chasing fireflies, her laughter floating through the air like music. "I wish I could say, I don't care," I said quietly. "But I do. I still care." Sarah didn't answer right away. She reached for my hand. It was warm and steady. "You don't have to stop caring," she said. "You just have to stop letting him hurt you." And she was right. I would always love the little boy Benjamin once was, but I would no longer be sad about the man he became, because I had a new chapter to live now, and I had a new family to live it with. The final fight was coming, and when it did, I'd be ready to close the book. The courtroom felt colder this time. Maybe it was the stress in the air, or maybe it was because I knew exactly what Benjamin was trying to do again. He wasn't just challenging the will, he was trying to erase everything I'd done, every step I'd taken to protect my name, my dignity, and the one person who had stood by me when everyone else disappeared. Sarah sat beside me, at the table, now my legal daughter. Their hands were steady, but I could see the way her shoulders were tense, like she was ready to jump to my defense at any moment. Like a soldier, Benjamin, dressed in another expensive suit, didn't even look my way. His lawyer, new, shiny, and arrogant, tried to make it seem like a story of being tricked, that Sarah had taken advantage of an old man, that I had been forced, that none of my choices could be trusted. They used my age. They used the idea of a weak senior, but they forgot one thing. I was still alive. Still there, still strong. I stood when I was told to. My voice was clear and strong. I made every choice knowing what I was doing, I said, looking right at the judge. And I stand by them. I changed my will not because I was confused, but because I had a clear mind. I chose to give my things to someone who earned it, not someone who thought he had a right to it. The other lawyer gave a small, mean smile. And what about your son? Are you saying he deserves nothing? I didn't move. I'm saying he deserves exactly what he gave me in the last years of my life. Quiet, distance, not caring. A small sound went through the courtroom. David, my lawyer, then took the floor. He showed the adoption papers, legal, complete, and strong. He showed Sarah's years of service, her perfect record, her strong loyalty. He reminded the court of Benjamin's previous attempt to have me put in a mental place. And then he made the final move, the audio recording again, Benjamin's voice, proud and clear, speaking about using the legal system to get the will back. The judge sat back in her chair, crossed her arms, and sighed. I've seen a lot of ugly family fights, she said, but this is different. This is planned cruelty dressed up as concern. She turned to Benjamin. Miss Carter, not only do I say no to your request, but I am sending your actions to the State Bar Association to be looked at. This courtroom allowed for payment for emotional damage. You'd owe your father much more than money. I couldn't stop myself. I let the tears fall, not from sadness, but from feeling free. It was over. Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting, but I didn't stop. Sarah and I walked hand in hand to the car. We didn't need to say anything. We didn't need the world to understand, because we understood. Back at the facility, I packed my things for the last time. Not in secret, not in fear, but with happiness. We were moving into a small house just outside of town. A simple house with a backyard and a workshop I could use again. Sarah called it ours. Chloe had already picked out where her swing set would go. As I zipped up the final suitcase, I looked around the room that had once felt like a jail. It was just a space now, a chapter that had done its job. Before we left, I placed the old photo of Elizabeth and me in my bag. I looked at her face, her smile. I kept my promise, I whispered. I didn't let him take everything. Outside, Sarah made a gentle honk from the car. I took one last look, then closed the door behind me, and just like that, I walked out. Not beaten, but reborn. Not forgotten, but chosen. The sun was warm on my face as we drove into the driveway of our new home. It wasn't big or fancy, just a simple cottage with light blue shutters and a porch swing already making a sound in the wind. But to me, it felt like a palace, because this time I had chosen it. No one had pulled me here. No one had packed my things without asking. I came on my own terms, and I brought with me the only people who had truly stayed. Sarah helped me out of the car while Chloe ran ahead, laughing as she announced which bedroom she wanted. There were daisies in the front yard already growing. I smiled. Elizabeth would have loved this place. I hadn't heard a word from Benjamin since the ruling. No calls, no emails, nothing. A part of me kept waiting for a final plea, or maybe an apology, but none came, and that quietness said more than any words ever could. We unpacked slowly, enjoying each moment. I placed Elizabeth's photo on the fireplace. Sarah hung up drawings Chloe had made in school. We filled the kitchen with smells, cinnamon, basil, fresh bread. Life returned to my bones in ways I didn't know I still needed. A week later, a letter came, not from Benjamin, but from his lawyer. It was a formal notice. Benjamin had filed for bankruptcy. It seemed his reputation had been hurt after the court hearing. His business plans had started to fall apart. People who had invested money were taking it out. Word had gotten around. You can't hide a heart like his forever. And just like that, the man who had tried to steal everything from me lost everything himself. I didn't smile when I read it. I didn't act like I had won, but I did breathe out deeply and fully for the first time in years. Because justice doesn't always make a loud sound. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it's watching your enemy fall without ever having to lift a hand. One afternoon, I sat on the back porch with Sarah. The air smelled like fresh grass and warm dirt. She was reading, and I was working on a small birdhouse for Chloe's room. "Do you ever feel bad about it?" she asked quietly. "Giving me so much?" I looked up, surprised. "I didn't give you anything," I said. "You earned it. You, every bit of it." She looked down, her eyes glassy. No one's ever said that to me before. I reached over and took her hand in mine. Well, get used to it, I smiled. You're stuck with me now. That night, I dreamed of Elizabeth. We were dancing in the living room, slow and silly like we used to. She was wearing her silly plaid slippers, and I could feel her hand on my waist like she had never left. When I woke up, there were birds singing outside. The sun came in through the curtains. I could hear Chloe giggling from her room. And I realized something. This was home. Not the house, not the bricks, or the furniture. The feeling, the peace, the laughter, the love. I had found my family, not by blood, but in the ones who chose to stay. Benjamin had lost a lot of money, but I had gained a future, and I wouldn't trade places with him for all the money in the world. The garden was full of light. Golden afternoon sun spilled across the rows of fresh dirt, where I had just planted a handful of wildflower seeds, with Chloe. Her tiny hands had been covered in dirt. Her face was smudged, but her laughter, pure, real joy, still echoed in the wind. I sat on the porch swing now, a glass of lemonade in my hand, watching her run across the lawn with her small butterfly net, chasing nothing special. And Sarah, she stood barefoot in the grass, smiling, her hair tied back, sleeves rolled up. She looked younger these days, lighter, like some invisible weight had finally lifted from her shoulders. This was peace. This was healing. This was everything I'd been told I couldn't have, and everything I had chosen to build with the pieces left behind. For so long, I thought getting old meant losing parts of yourself. I thought it meant being erased, made invisible. I never thought I'd be fighting for my name, my worth, my voice. But I did fight, and I won, not with anger, not with revenge, but with truth, with kindness, with a clear mind. After the ruling, Benjamin never reached out again. Not to say he was sorry, not to explain, just quietness. And I let it stay that way. There's a kind of sadness that comes with letting go of someone you once loved without conditions. It's quiet and slow and private, but it's needed. I don't hate him. I don't wish him pain. I just don't give him the power to tell me who I am anymore. Instead, I put my energy into planting, into woodworking, into showing Chloe how to make her first peach cobbler, into helping Sarah get her nursing papers updated so she could open a small care service from home. We became something more than a household. We became a family, a real one, built not from shared blood, but from shared fights, from loyalty, from love in its purest form. Every morning I wake up and choose this life, not because it's perfect, but because it's mine, and because I fought for it. I thought my story was ending. The day Benjamin wheeled me into that place, but I was wrong. That was just the beginning of my final act. The one I got to write. The one that ends with my hands in the dirt, laughter in the air, and peace in my chest. As the sun went down lower, I reached over and picked a single sunflower from the pot next to me. My favorite. Elizabeth once told me sunflowers always turn toward the light. I think I finally understand what she meant, because even after everything, after the betrayal, the quietness, the being alone, I found the light again. I let it find me, and I followed it home. The blood may have left me, but the love saved me. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to click the subscribe button, and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your story matters to us.